Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by ADDitude Magazine.
Welcome, everyone. This is Stuart Jordan for ADDitude Magazine, and you are listening to ADDitude's ADHD Experts. In this hour of ADHD Experts, we're going to be talking about being normal, feeling normal, and accepting your ADHD brain. Our guest today is Stacey Turis, who is one of ADDitude's most popular bloggers. Her blog, Absent-Minded Superhero, describes her life with ADHD and giftedness, and she is, as she is proud of saying, an expert on being weird. Her topic today is normal is so overrated, feeling good about your ADHD brain. Stacey blogs and writes at her own website, staceyturis.com. And she is the author of Here's Not to Catching Our Hair on Fire, an absent-minded tale of life with giftedness and attention deficit. Oh, look, it's a chicken. Thank you, Stacey, for joining us today. And we're really happy for you to be here. And I forgot to mention, Stacey also has a wonderful Facebook page, ADHD Superhero, that you may want to check out as well. So it's time to get started, and take it away, Stacey.
Okay, good. I'm so happy to be here. Well, first of all, I just kind of have to give a disclaimer that I'm not here to tell you how to fix your ADHD. I can't tell you how to stop procrastinating because I procrastinate. I can't tell you how to keep a proper calendar or a to-do list because I don't do either one. I lose my keys. I forget my kids. I miss appointments. I forget my shoes. I did that the other day and wore my dress backwards with a big slit in it. I do all of these things, but the difference between the old me that literally hated myself and the current me that pretty much loves who I am is that I stopped putting energy towards trying to change those physiologically unchangeable things and redirected it instead towards more accepting them. And I have to say that was a major process, and that required effort, not only on my part, but on the part of my family and friends that I surround myself with, because it's a group effort. Even if we in our tribe evolve and come to a place where we find that elusive self-acceptance, if we're still surrounded by people that are shaming us or making us feel bad for the way we're wired, we are still being held down and held back from, shining the way we can shine. So a major part of the self-acceptance process is first educating people around you. And then if that doesn't work, you start the purging. And you purge the people in your lives that aren't lifting you up. And it's a hard thing to go through. It was a miserable thing to go through, literally seeing who makes me feel good, who makes me feel bad. Can I change their perception? If not, then they have to go. And you lose people. But once you really apply and establish your own rules of self-acceptance and start living your life as a person that's, fully confident in your strengths and really less concerned about your struggles, it's almost contagious. It's like when you change your own perception of you, you start to change how others perceive you. And the weird, crazy, cool thing is you'll be surprised at how your own self-love, you start affecting people around you that decide, God, I want to be happy like that girl. What does she do? I love myself. That's what it is. So they start their own self-acceptance process. And whether they're tribal or not, it's just a really cool thing to see people transform into their best selves by basically just being themselves. And if we're not being ourselves, we're fighting ourselves. And beating yourself up is so detrimental to your psyche and your well-being. There's nothing that will color your life dark and sad more than negative self-talk. And like every other person, tribal or not, we have strengths, we have struggles, but none of that defines who we are as a person. And as human beings, I truly believe what we put out, what we give, what our intentions are, those are the qualities that make us people. The world is not going to be impacted if we never mail that birthday card we bought for someone. But that business plan or that film idea or that invention or the art you created, those are the things that have a positive collective impact on us and on the world. And our tribe has so many things we're amazing at. We just need to start putting our energy in that direction. Because honestly, I almost feel like it's our destiny or our to develop what we've been blessed with and then share it with the world so they can benefit. Question is, how do we go about making this profound change? First thing we need to do is start paying attention. Pay attention to the things you tell yourself and how those things make you feel. If it makes you feel crappy, tell yourself the opposite. Even if it feels weird and wrong and like you're lying to yourself, do it, because the point is to establish a habit of positive self-talk. Once you start talking nice to yourself, you'll dig it. You'll want to do it more often, and eventually the negative self-talk just literally gets pushed out. So start to give yourself props, and when you do something that does deserve respect, don't be shy with yourself. Give yourself respect, and you'll start believing what you're saying. You really will. I want to talk about some of those ADHD quirks that can lead to the negative self-talk. And let's break it down and see if it's really something we should be beating ourselves down for. Downtime and alone time. I used to have to violently defend my need for alone time, especially as a parent with 2 kids and a husband and friends and family. ADHDers need downtime. We need to process things in our brain. And when I'm in tune with my brain, I'll literally sit on the couch and look out the window. And it is sometimes an hour, sometimes more, but I just let it do its thing. And when I give it its processing time, since it obviously can't process in real time, afterwards I feel calm, I feel relaxed, and it's like I made a bunch of room in my brain so things can kind of settle in and they're not just flying around haphazardly. This makes me feel like I'm on top of things. And then when I'm on top of things, I have more confidence and I'm more productive. And nothing makes our tribe feel more together than as if we've been productive. Another thing is procrastination. And it's kind of weird because when our to-do list is small and we have a lot of time, we don't get anything accomplished. And when our to-do list is big and we have a short amount of time, we get a lot more accomplished. So it may look like we're procrastinating when we wait till the day of to start and complete something, but really we're waiting for our brain to find that sweet spot, which is when the matter becomes urgent enough to motivate us to move. If I try to do something early, I can't get excited about it, and my brain kind of skids to a stop. But on the other hand, and this is why we have to find the sweet spot. If I move too late on something, it puts me under stress. And it's not the good stimulating stress, we get from being under pressure that we work so well under, but it's that illness-inducing stress we get from being under pressure without having set ourselves up for success by allowing enough time to hit the deadline. So there's a nice sweet spot in there where we're still getting that pressure we need, but it's not negative. Another thing our tribe struggles with is accurately, assessing how much time any given activity will take. I know I grossly underestimate that. So basically I toss out how long I think something will take, and then I multiply it by 5. And that's what I have to go with, and it's dead on. So there's a fine line between using procrastination powers for good and using our procrastination powers to basically stress ourselves, stress those around us, having that chaotic energy that's uselessly focused now on the impending deadline instead of the road there, which I feel like it's basically a waste of our genius. Another thing that we have trouble with, friendships. ADHDers are not good friends in the traditional sense. You can't expect birthday cards, phone calls to catch up. And if we were judged by society on our relationship skills, we would not get a good grade. I have beat myself up over this, but I then realized that there are so many ways that we shine in our relationships. When you're with us, you have our full attention. We are living and feeling everything you're telling us because it's so important for us to relate to you and what you're saying. And I know that we'll go to the ends of the earth and back to do something because that's how we roll. We are people of humanity. If that's not friendship, I don't know what is. So basically, it's like surround yourself with people that recognize true qualities of a friendship and not the shallow qualities that, other less evolved people have, quote unquote, assigned to friendship based on their ego and basically silly expectations. When it comes to relationship, or relating with people, our tribe is often accused of one-upping with our experiences after someone tells a story. And I find myself doing that, but I never understood the motivation because my intention was never to one-up a person. For my character, I'm more likely to build up a person. So after I really analyzed it, I figured out we're not one-upping. We're calling on our experiences to really feel the story. And then afterwards, we share our own experience as a way of saying, I feel you. I get it. I relate to what you're saying. You are not alone. I think that is such a beautiful trait to have, and I think it would be a shame to keep that locked inside. Let's talk about piling. I love my piles. And for those that don't pile, piles look like an unorganized mess. But for those that do, piles are how we keep everything together. For our tribe, out of sight is basically out of mind. That's a real thing. But piles allow us to see everything we're working with. And it's also the reason I can't stand closets. And I have my floor closet because they're in a pile on the floor and I can see everything. I do have to remind my OCD husband like every week, do not sort my piles or put stuff away because I can't find anything when you do that. Let's just talk about tackling the day-by-day stuff. This is probably going to make ADHD coaches cringe, but I have found that this works for me. When you have serious and fun stuff to do on your list, or the list that I don't make, the list that just bounces around in my head, do the fun stuff first. Once you get that nice little dopamine drop from accomplishing the fun stuff, your body digs the groove. It wants more good stuff, and now it has motivation to accomplish the crappy just to get more of the good. That's my only tip on getting stuff done, because like I said, there's no way that I can fix all of these things. I've just learned how to basically cope in a way that makes me happy. We aren't perfect. I mean, ADHDers are not perfect. We never will be. It's painful to dilute our focus when we're on a good roll and hyper-focused. If I'm hyper-focused on one area of my life, other parts get less attention. That is just the way it is. Sometimes focusing on being productive at work means my kid goes to school in shorts and cowboy boots until I remember to buy sandals, but I'm okay with that. And she loves to wear cowboy boots with shorts, so it's not something I'm going to beat myself up over. Especially knowing once I feel out of balance with my work to family ratio, I'll hyper-focus on the family part, and then work won't get as much love. But when you live in a state of all or nothing like our tribe does, achieving balance really resembles a person running from one end of the teeter-totter to the other. There's no real balance in there. I mean, a little right when you hit the center. But for our tribe, that's not what we're looking for. The trick is for us to never stay on one side for too long before you change directions. As long as you know when to take off for the other side, you as a tribes person are successfully practicing the art of balance, which basically keeps our angst to a minimum. And others probably don't see balance the same way, but our tribe has got to stop comparing ourselves to people around us. We don't work the same way, and that's okay. We do things our way. We do things the way we know how, and that is good enough. And it's great because we're developing coping skills to survive in the world that really isn't very tribal friendly. And if we're developing coping skills, it means we're evolving. And evolving is something that our tribe has great strength in. And one of the traits I believe that we are meant to teach those that aren't in our tribe, everything needs to evolve. It's ingrained in us to do so. I hope you're starting to understand how important perception is to our well-being. These things we've been told, we've been telling ourselves, it's outdated, it's ridiculous. We are amazing, amazing beings. And I've always said, if there was a surgery that someone could switch out my brain for one that's, not as feisty, I'd probably stick with what I have because I can't imagine not seeing the world through the layers and colors and sounds and feelings that I see. And I'm not willing to give it up to be able to, get my taxes in on time. But I do agree. Being part of the ADHD tribe is difficult in many ways. But our best coping skill is to learn to go with the flow. I've said before that living with ADHD is like being on a roller coaster. There's flips, there's flops, there's turns. It's not for the faint of heart. I know a lot of people that could never live the way I live life, but we're truly, truly wired to experience life at more intense levels. And as much pain as that brings us, you know, we hit the lows. The highs are pretty indescribable. Feeling that way, getting to feel the love. You know, we fall in love. We love so hard. We crash so hard. And if we know that those things are going to flow, it makes it a lot easier. Knowing will always fluctuate. When we're down, we'll go up, and vice versa. But knowing that takes some of the surprise out of it, and it gives us more of a sense of control. So, I mean, our favorite mantra should really be day by day. That's how we roll. Day by day in our tribe is our best way of surviving. Let's talk about finding our passions, finding something we're passionate about. Colors our perception with excitement, love, and, you know, brotherhood. Life is good when we're involved in something we're passionate about. Don't worry about making money at it because that adds pressure. Try out for that play. Take the guitar lessons. Learning is stimulating, especially when you see progress. Another one of my tips that I always laugh at yourself often. You know, tribal tip of the day, never agree to let someone follow you because 9 times out of 10 you'll forget they're there. But the best part of self-acceptance is being able to giggle when the annoyed person that you lost 30 minutes ago is totally mad that you forgot. And it's like, yeah, we know it's ridiculous. We forgot you were following us, but hey, that's also what makes it funny. Guilt, I'll say it again. We're all or nothing. We're never lukewarm. We don't hang out in that neutral balance section. But it's not a bad thing. We just have to know how to keep ourselves in balance. And the way to stay balanced is to leave terrorizing and unproductive emotions like regret and guilt behind. Never, ever let anyone put guilt on you. Don't put it on yourself. It is not a good motivator unless you're doing something, you know, illegal. It sucks your soul. It's time to make your life yours. Stop listening to everything around you that tells you you're doing it wrong and you're doing it bad. You do you, I'll do me, they can do them. Last thing I want to talk about, emotions. We kind of find ourselves in 3 different places with emotions. Sometimes we're numb, sometimes we are disengaged, and sometimes we're all about it. But it's kind of cool because their emotions are like these interesting, beautiful, impulsive creatures that should basically just touch us with their intensity. But they should not be a driving force behind our reactions. So I kind of look at emotions as something curious that should be investigated and kind of appreciated, but not necessarily, you know, held hostage. Anyway, I've said it again. Stop listening to voices around you. Get to know who you are. No more beating yourself up. It's a waste of energy. Listen to the voice that's been telling you you're special and extraordinary. We can't live by the standards of non-tribal people. We have to dance to our own song, follow our own path, project our own colors, live the way our heart, our guts, our soul tells us it's right. We'll end up where we're supposed to be. And when we get there day by day, don't think about tomorrow. Don't think about yesterday. Be happy with where you've landed.
Great, Stacey. Thank you so much. Really interesting, and we've got a lot of interesting comments and questions coming in. So folks, people who joined late, just type your questions in the box, and we will try to get to as many as we can. You really sort of seem to have struck a chord, Stacey. There's some great comments coming in. Someone saying you're awesome. You've hit you've hit the nail right on the head. Wow, you feel like you truly know me. Thank you for this. Let's start with some really simple stuff. A couple of people have questions about and comments about tribe. And some people seem to really sort of immediately get it, and other people are sort of saying, could you explain what you think of and what you mean of when you talk about a tribe?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, I consider our people, our tribe, as something just like a tribe would be. Someone that relates to each other, that knows each other, that has the same tendencies, can come together as an understanding, as a group, feel wanted, feel included. So we're not just these random people that are kind of placed all over the place with these personality traits and quirks. We are really bound together and bonded together, and we're not alone. And that's why we're a tribe.
Great. Someone says here, it says, I have a very difficult time with commitment. Do you want to sort of take a swing at that one?
I'll take a swing at it, but I am with you on the commitment thing. And that is where day by day comes in for me. Because if there's any pressure for me to try to make a decision that is in the future where there are a billion steps that for me have to happen before that, because basically we live every day taking step by step, right? We're like, sometimes we're minute by minute. Oh my God, I just have to get through this. I just have to get through this. I never let it go farther than day by day because it keeps the peace in me. I don't have to figure everything out. I don't have to commit to things. I have to commit to things at my kids' school. I have to commit to that stuff. But I also, when there's something I have to commit to, for example, well, let me say this. If there's something that you are really focused on committing to, the barriers will go away. So that's how I know it's a good path. If there's all these barriers, then I don't commit to it. Or I commit to it and I say, look, I'm just telling you, I might change my mind if I don't fancy doing this when it comes down to it. And if you throw that out there, you know, it is what it is. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to give you an excuse. I am just telling you that I might fancy it when it comes. I might not, because I don't know what's going to happen in between then.
Just a thought about making decisions, because this actually came up in a webcast a couple of weeks ago, and the comment is that when having to make serious decisions, always try and boil it down to as close to an A or B choice as possible. There was a comment made that there really aren't as many choices as you think there are. When you really get down to it, you can try and simplify it, which will help it get to an answer.
It's so true, because some of the things that we consider as barriers are really not barriers. They're just life. And so when you're making like a pros and cons list, a lot of those cons really aren't cons. They're just stuff you have to get through. I am highly ambitious, and so not by, I have to fight myself constantly and overcompensate for how I want to be. And so I'm constantly battling barriers that really aren't barriers, but they are to me. So I have learned to really simplify things that way. The A and B thing, it's like, really, what is the root of this? For example, my husband is getting transferred to LA in a couple months, and so we had to make that decision, and it was really hard making that decision. But it's kind of funny because I've stopped using, and we didn't talk about this, and we should have, but our tribe has an amazing intuition, off the charts intuition. It's something that I believe everybody should develop. And I've gotten to the point where I know that my heart and my mind are probably not going to agree, because I'm very logical, yet I'm also can be driven by emotions. And so I've really learned to develop that gut instinct that we naturally have. And so now I don't use logic and I don't use emotions to make my decisions. So for example, moving to LA, I'm going to leave everyone I love. It's more expensive, all this stuff, but my gut's telling me to go. And so all those things that would be barriers, moving, packing, all of that stuff, they're no longer barriers, because my gut says, look, girl, this is what you have to do. This is where you have to go. I don't care what you have to do to get there. Power through it and move. And so, that's how I roll now.
Great. Question here. all my life, my brain has always gone in a million different directions, and I seem to have a million different interests. How do I cut down on the noise and the clutter and so many competing interests?
Ooh, I have a billion interests. I have so many interests. It's crazy. But what I don't try to cut down on them, because what initially I used to think, okay, if I have an interest, then I need to work on that interest and I need to focus on that interest and I probably need to make money on that interest. And I found that I don't have to narrow it down. I can go get a book on what I am interested in. Sometimes that leads to another book on what I'm interested, or reading up on the internet or whatever, and that leads to something else and something else and something else. And surprisingly, when you are researching it or you're dabbling in it and it leads you to other things, you'll suddenly realize that all of your interests are really in one big bubble and kind of relate to each other. So it's not up to you to pick out which interest you're going to focus on. Your job is to dabble in all of your interests, whether you're like, I'm going to pick one right now just to check it out. You don't have to commit to that, and that's where the pressure comes from. Don't commit to it. Read a book on it. You might find some other direction to go. You might find that you really like that. And so eventually, I feel like I'm going to hit all my interests because organically that's the way it's going.
Great. Now, there's a question here from someone who I think they're picking up on the fact that your comment about your OCD husband, saying, any recommendations on how to deal with a highly organized OCD partner when I'm the ADD partner struggling with messiness and getting things done?
If you saw my room, you would laugh. It's almost like there's a strip of tape that goes down the center, and his side is totally clean and my side has all my, my floor closet on it and 10 water cups on the side table. And it got to a point where there had to be a coming together on this, because as much as I want him to understand that I can't change the way my brain works, it is the same thing with him. And so I have to meet him halfway. Okay, I'll pick up the 10 water cups, but there's also him meeting me halfway. And so if it gets to a point where he's just like, if there's something that needs to be cleaned up, he'll either do it himself. That's what he usually does it himself, which I know is totally annoying. But we've just kind of come to this place where it's not really an issue. He accepts me, I accept him. We don't worry about what people think if they come over to our house. I'll have dishes in the sink. If it were up to him, there wouldn't be dishes in the sink. I would much rather spend my time on, other stuff, not cleaning. And so I always call it my sensibly messy house. It's like, dude, we live here, man. Life is going on here. I'm not going to stop life so I can worry about the dishes. I'll do the dishes when I get to the dishes. So it's just basically a coming together of both of you accepting each other and respecting that we have different brains.
How long did it take you guys to basically come to that conclusion?
Well, it took my diagnosis to come to that conclusion, because not only was he frustrated with me and my inability to have a spotless house, I was frustrated with myself because that's how I was raised. My mother raised me to, she had a spotless house. She's a perfectionist. She's not OCD. She has just like a regular old brain. Very logical though. But so I wasn't raised like that. I was raised to be really, in her eyes, responsible and everything else. So I was able to take care of that until I had kids. And then once I had kids, my whole life just fell apart, because keeping myself together was a full-time job. Keeping myself together the way that my mom taught me that I need to keep myself together, and keeping myself together the way that others expected me to keep myself together, was a full-time job for myself. When I added on a husband and kids and 3 cats and a dog, I had to come to the realization that It ain't going to happen. And I can either, be suicidal like I was because I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I function like normal people do? Or I can go, oh my gosh, I just don't have the same kind of brain. Just like some people, love numbers. Some people create art. Nobody gets on the tax person because he doesn't fancy painting a picture. And nobody gets on the artist because she doesn't fancy doing someone's taxes. It's like, it's the same brain. I mean, it's the same thing. We all have different brains. All of us do. We all have our own quirks. And basically, even with non-tribal people, I found that, they have these issues with themselves and they could use the same self-acceptance thing that we can use.
Great. I think here's going a slightly different direction, but I know it's one that I think you've personally dealt with. Jess writes that she's a mom of two, a librarian and an artist, and the balance is so challenging. And then she goes on to say she would like to make the leap to art and writing and leave the library work behind, and feels like a huge leap of faith. And how do you find the confidence to make a big change like that and believe in yourself and get other people on board with your decision?
I've always said with ADHD and with me, I have no idea what I cannot do. I don't know limits. And that is something else that we are blessed with, is to not know these limits. What I do, I mean, for like when I wrote my book, I was still working and doing all that stuff. And it took me 3 years, and I basically had such a feeling, and I've had this that I had to get this out. There was such a drive, and it killed me. It killed me because even writing a blog is desperately hard for me. But it's kind of like, if it's something that you're so passionate about, and something that your gut, and like I said, I'm big on guts. I know when my gut's telling me to do something, I have to have faith. I know that if I'm following my gut, if I'm following what I'm supposed to be doing and I can feel that it's right, I don't have to worry about how it's going to turn out. It's going to turn out fine. A leap of faith is a leap. You're always going to land somewhere, and it's where you land and start off from there. That's how it unfolds. You're going to land. You're going to be fine. It's all going to work out, and it always does. But that's the one thing that we have to remember and always keep in mind, is that it's always going to be okay, no matter what. Even if there's struggles, like my mom with moving to LA, she's just like, all this stuff you have to do. You have to sell the house. You have to blah, blah, blah. You have to blah, blah, blah. This logical mind. And I'm like, but that just because there's struggles doesn't mean it's the wrong path. The right path is often a struggle. And so those are the things, those are the barriers you have to look at. Is it a wrong decision barrier, or is it just a struggle? Because that's where we learn from. And so it's just always keeping that in mind.
Okay, great. There's a couple of questions that are very similar that have to do with dealing with the folks around you who are not ADHD, and asking, how do you go about trying to make them understand how your brain works and how you're different?
Well, I did a lot of that with books and articles, and I wouldn't find like big, long things that they would have to read, but I'd find bullet points. Printing off articles from ADDitude with the bulleted points and anything that you, that you vibe with, that explains you and explains to them. And it took me years to go through this process. It was ugly. It was painful. It was a lot of fighting. It was a lot of trying to get, because once I locked onto this and knew that this was it, I wasn't backing down, and I was not going to accept anybody making me feel that way or the way that I was made. And so it was basically, I puffed up and I freaking held my ground, and I battled who I needed to battle, and I purged who I needed to purge, and I had discussions with who I needed to have discussions with, sometimes over and over and over and over. And then I got to a point where not only was I happy with myself, but I found some of this ADHD stuff to be kind of funny. And then when I really started getting relaxed about it, and for example, saying like, what was I talking about? When I used to do that, that used to make my blood just go cold. And I got so scared that someone would think that I was stupid or whatever. And so it's just at a point where you get to a point where you accept it, and then it's so acceptable that you can find it funny. And that's what I was talking about, that when you change the way you look at yourself and the way you treat yourself and the way you talk to yourself, others will start to follow. Others will start to follow. But it's a battle in the beginning, and you just have to be up for it, but it's worth it. You are worth the battle, because at the end, it's happiness. I'm happier than I've ever been in my whole life, and I can't believe that this happiness was available to the girl, that wanted to die. So it's cool. It's worth it.
There are a number of additional similar questions that have to do with just being diagnosed and dealing with the diagnosis both personally and then with the folks around you. I think it sort of builds on what you were just saying. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. When I was diagnosed, we go through this range of emotions, and at first it was just like, oh my gosh, like I thought all these things were wrong with me, but really it's just like, one. So that was cool. And then finding out all these things that I thought were wrong, and finding the physiological reason why, or the emotional reason why, or psychological reason why. That's why I'm always breaking things down, so we can understand why, to understand it's not coming from a bad place. This is why we do it. It's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, it was that, and then it was anger, because why didn't they catch it earlier? And then it was regret. What could I have been had they, caught it earlier? There's sadness for what you lost. But then once you kind of move through those emotions and get to a point where you realize, wow, what I have is so incredibly powerful that I'm okay that I had to go through all that. I'm okay because now I know what I'm dealing with. I know how to direct this insane energy into a productive thing that can change, me, the people around me, the people of the world. And so if I didn't have this, I would never have my ADHD superhero page. And there's like 188,000 people on there every day that are like, I'm home. I found my people. Every single day I'm in tears reading comments. And it's a cool thing. I'm happy that I could go through that to be where I am today.
Vanessa had a question, and she says, how do you find time for yourself to think and stare out the window while you have 2 kids, a dog, 3 cats? What do you tell your kids and isn't too heavy for your husband?
Well, the kids are at school most of the time when it's not summer, so that's usually when it takes place. But in the summer, when I really need my alone time because the kids aren't at school, I will either go, I have a chair in the garage between the fridge and the car that I sit in that's like a little cave, and there's no stimulation going on. There's no sound. I keep it dark, and that allows me to do that. My husband knows that I have to have that. When I don't have that downtime, that processing time, I get agitated. There's too much going on in my head. And so he respects that, and he will, if it's something where, the kids are here, then he'll watch them while I do it. Sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. My kids are basically the same way. My daughter has always, since before she was 2, closed herself in her room to play. And we know that she needs that downtime. She's needed it, since she was little. And so we all respect in our family what is necessary to make us happy. And we are a happy family. we're a very happy family. So something is working with all that.
Great. You seem to have really hit a common point that a lot of people can seem to relate with when you talk about your piles of stuff, and which I personally can also relate to because I'm looking at all my piles. But someone made the comment of basically, how did you get through to your husband in terms of not touching your piles?
Oh, it's still an ongoing battle. It's still an ongoing battle because, see, I call him the Hoover because with his OCD, it's like he almost doesn't even pay attention. He just wants to discard. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's, he doesn't know what's important or whatever. So he'll put things away. And I say that, put things away, but he doesn't know where he puts them because his only goal is to make the environment look less cluttered. My goal is to know where my crap is. And so it's, every couple of weeks, it's me, where's my blah, 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 and him trying to find it and me getting pissed. And, so it's not like it goes smooth all the time. But for the most part, he knows don't touch my stuff because the outcome is just terrible. There's nothing that makes me more insta-pissed than not being able to find something that I knew where it was. I mean, just knowing where something is for me is a big deal. So it doesn't always work, but.
Similar question about piles, and in this case, as opposed to dealing with other people, it's sort of dealing with it yourself in terms of how do you manage your piles so that the stuff that you just it doesn't become so old and no longer relevant and just bordering on hoarder.
I wish I could take a picture for you guys to see this pile of boxes and papers and boxes and laundry baskets and an old computer and all this crap that's in the corner of my office. And basically what I do is I just get to a point where either I can't find something that I know is in the pile or I get slightly ambitious for some reason and I'll go through and I'll purge. And when I purge, it's just like I have to get because I have a tendency to have emotional attachments to things. So sometimes I just have to get in that mood and then I'll go through and purge. But there's no way that I can maintain that at all times, keeping my office clean and not of piles. And I just accepted it. It is what it is. I deal with it when I deal with it. And I don't when I, don't have time or whatever. So you just have to just pick your battles. But it's nothing I beat myself up for at all. I just, walk around the stuff.
Question here. It says, do you have any tips or tricks for a family who has three individuals with ADHD? And I know you as a mom having ADHD and having kids with ADHD. You want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, the great thing about being a mom with ADHD and having kids with ADHD is that you're kind of starting off on the same wavelength. There are benefits to being similar and there are non-benefits. The benefits are that we all have quirky sense of humor. We're all happy-go-lucky people. We're all positive. The downside is that my daughter needs me to help her structure herself so that she can clean her room. And I'm like, I can't even clean my own room. So, and school stuff is terribly hard for me. And luckily I have a very strong circle of friends at the school that keep me on my toes, and they'll text me, don't forget you have to hand this in, don't forget you have to be here, don't forget you have to whatever. And so I for my kids, I really had to build a strong support group, for that stuff that comes with kids, for example, the scheduling in school and stuff like that. But as far as like behavioral or anything like that, I mean, some days my kids forget their shoes. Some days I forget my shoes. It's just like, we just do it. We just do what we do, and we just try to have a positive attitude. And I've never talked down to my kids about their brains or the way they think, or, I just try to really focus on those strengths that they have. And it's kind of funny because even living in a house where we're all very positive, and I'm constantly trying to, make sure their self-esteem is in check. And just the other day, my daughter was like, I am so ugly. And I'm like, where does that come from? Where does that come from? And so it comes from other places too. And so basically with my kids, my goal is to not let them go through what I as a kid had to go through, where people didn't understand me, and where I, in school, and the teachers, and, I had really bad behavior. I was in trouble a lot. I was expelled. I got in fist fights. I mean, I just feel like by, focusing on what they're feeling, sharing their feelings, that's the biggest thing, is for them to communicate how they're feeling. And then we just take it, by day. As long as I know that they're communicating with me and that I can change their perception on something and teach them how to do the same thing, then, and they're alive and I fed them, we're good. We're golden.
How about friends? Do you have ADHD friends, and how do you deal with them differently than regular friends?
I have a lot of ADHD friends, and the great thing about ADHD friends is that even though some of our quirks aren't the same, for example, I have a friend that's listening right now that is constantly late. And I'm not late. I'm actually obsessively on time. But I have to understand that there is something in her brain that makes her consistently late. It's not going to help if I rag on her about it. It's not going to help if I make her feel bad when she shows up late. Nothing is going to make her change the way that her brain works. And so that's where I kind of go from, is she accepts things about me that she doesn't understand, and vice versa. And again, having the perception, everybody has a different brain. We all have different experiences that color the way that we look at things. Nobody's looking at anything the same way. And so that's kind of how I live and why I am so happy. And then with my non-ADHD friends, like I said, I've surrounded myself with people that lifted me up, and I've purged myself of the people that held me down. And so my non-ADHD friends, they might not understand, but they accept it, and they in turn try to help me in some of those struggles that I have. For example, knowing where a birthday party is, when a birthday party is, all of that stuff. And so it's the same thing. It's surrounding yourself by people that lift you up.
Great. On the career and work front, Kendall writes, I have difficulty with commitment. I haven't found a career yet. I panic when it comes to committing. Is it me, or is this just a trait of our tribe?
Well, it's kind of funny because I've started, I don't know how many now, businesses. I mean, a lot of businesses. I've never been able to commit to a career. I've been a TV show host. I've been in radio. I've been in advertising. I've been in IT. I've been in photography. It's like anything that, like I said, like things lead to other things. I can't make the commitment either to something, that's why my whole goal was always, I want to make enough money so that I can work for free, because then I knew I was doing whatever I wanted to do. So that's kind of how I kind of have to organically roll into things, because I can't make a commitment, and I'm not one to push things either. Like I said, I go with the flow, and I usually end up where I'm supposed to be. And it's kind of funny because I had this band that I just really loved their music. And so my friends and I would go to their shows, and as a marketing person, it really annoyed me how they, handled their social media and everything else. And so at one point, I was just like, hey, you guys want me to help you with your social media? Well, that was a year ago. And I can't even tell you how far, it's basically like a full-time job at this point, except we're bringing concerts into Texas and like all this crazy stuff. But my whole point is, never in my mind did I think I was going to work for a band. Never. And it just organically happened that way. And a year later, I'm the happiest I've ever been as far as I'm doing my own stuff, but it's stimulating what I'm doing, and it's my terms because they just kind of go with the flow. And so it happened organically, though, and it was just following something I was passionate about. I was passionate about their music. That's all. That's where it started. And it organically led to, me sometimes managing the band, really. So it's weird how life happened like that.
Wow, thanks. There are so many questions that's still coming in that we've hardly scratched the surface, and we only have time for maybe like one more. Someone here, Carrie writes, I have a hard time just getting started with stuff, whether it's writing a book, playing guitar. How do you get past getting started?
Oh, how do I get past getting started? I still have a guitar that I went to 2 lessons and then quit. I feel like if it's something that I am meant to be focusing on, and it's something that my passion is driving me to, I don't have to work on getting started. So if it's something that you really have to work on getting started with the passion, maybe it's time to kind of look at another direction or another passion that doesn't have as many emotional barriers to it or physical barriers to it. Or the other thing that you do is you just power up and tell yourself, I'm going to do one thing to get myself started on that. When we're getting ourselves started, it's like major barriers for us are calling a person. Like if there's something that requires me to call a person to get something started or going, it'll never happen. That's a barrier for me. And so sometimes I just say, okay, don't worry about any of the steps after that. Just make the call. That's all you have to do. Make the call. That's it. Once I make the call, it kind of just organically starts on its own. And so I basically just have to boil it down to that one single step and forget about the other steps behind it, because again, looking at the other steps behind it is a sense of commitment, a sense of overwhelm, and we just don't have to look at things that way. We can just take it one thing at a time, and that's the way that I am able to move. And then sometimes I'm moving fast, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sometimes I sit on number 6 for a week, but I try to keep moving. I always try to keep moving forward.
Great. We're just about out of time. So Stacey, any last comments, tips for everybody? Everybody just loves your stuff, and really just there's so many thank yous and
I'm
appreciation
so happy.
here.
I have goosebumps. Basically, it's just what I've said. It's like we are made this way. I find it really hard to believe that a deficit in our brain is responsible for these similar, personality traits and these crazy things that we're capable of. And I just think that it's just not worth our energy to think about. They say put your energy towards what you want to happen, not towards what you don't want to happen, because you don't want any of that energy going that way. And so it's the same thing. Put it towards your strengths. First and foremost, find your self-acceptance. Whether it's around you or not, go inside and start that. Start the positive self-talk. Start calling yourself out on treating yourself bad. And it starts with you, and then it moves outward. But we're amazing, amazing beings. I really think that. And I feel so incredibly lucky to be part of these people in this tribe. Very lucky, very blessed.
Thank you, Stacey. It's been great. Everybody really appreciated it. And we wish we had more time to get to all the other questions. Maybe we can convince you to come back and do another hour to...
For sure. I'd love to come back.
Do some more questions. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you all, and Stacey, very much for your time.
Thank you.
For more ADDitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit ADDitudemag.com. That's ADDitude.com.